Let's be real for a second. You've probably built your entire workflow, your whole AI-powered life, around ChatGPT, right? I'm talking custom agents, code assistants, all those personal automations, they're all running on OpenAI. But lately, things have gotten kind of weird. They're testing ads, they're getting rid of the APIs you actually depend on, and they're signing defense deals that are making their own people walk out the door. And through all of that, you might have felt a little bit stuck, locked in. Switching to an alternative, man, that used to feel like this massive, almost impossible task. But that whole reality, it just changed. And it happened way faster than anybody saw coming. Okay, let's get right into it. It now takes about 15 lines of code to swap out OpenAI for a competitor, like Claude. Yeah, just 15. And that one single fact is what's fueling this huge, seismic shift across the entire AI landscape. So in this explainer, we're going to break down all the hard evidence for what we're calling the Great AI Rotation. We're going to dig into Claude's winning formula, take a hard look at OpenAI's self-inflicted wounds, put the models head-to-head, and figure out what this new AI stack really means for you in 2026. First up, is this rotation even a real thing? Well, the data says yes, but the story is a little more interesting than you might think. See, this isn't some simple breakup story. People aren't just rage-quitting ChatGPT. What they're actually doing is diversifying. They're building a multi-model stack and picking the absolute best tool for each specific job. The clearest signal we have comes from platforms that act like traffic cops between developers and the models. A company called OpenRouter analyzed over 100 trillion tokens of real-world API calls, and just look at this chart. The pattern is crystal clear. Usage is spreading out. The whole era of just using one model for absolutely everything, it's ending, and it's ending fast. And we're seeing the exact same trend on the consumer side, too. Check this out. In early March of 2026, Claude's app just surged to #1 in US app downloads, flying right past ChatGPT. Now, look, downloads aren't the same thing as enterprise money, I get that. But they are a massive signal of what users want, and where all the energy and excitement is shifting. But here's what might be the most telling piece of evidence of all. Anthropic, the company behind Claude, just built a feature specifically called import memory. Now just think about the strategy behind that for a second. You don't put your precious engineering team on building a migration tool unless migration has become a huge, undeniable thing that your users are doing. This is proof that switching isn't just for a few people anymore. It's officially mainstream. So if developers are spreading their bets, what is it exactly that's pulling them towards Claude? Well, it's not just one thing. It's really 4 distinct themes that just keep coming up again and again in developer forums and user feedback. It all kind of boils down to these 4 things: amazing performance on coding and those really complex, long-running tasks, a much better ability to follow specific instructions, a very public, very deliberate stance on trust and safety, and, as we've seen, the fact that it's just getting so much easier and cheaper to make the switch. Let's start with the big one, coding. Claude Sona 4.6 shipped with a 1 million token context window. And that's not just some theoretical number. It means the model can hold an entire large code base in its active memory. That makes it incredible for complex projects, what developers call long horizon tasks. This is exactly why leaders at tools like Cursor and even GitHub are now publicly saying, yeah, for the really tough coding challenges, we use Claude. Next up is how well it follows instructions. Users consistently say that Claude is just more direct. It gives you less of that fluffy conversational boilerplate, and it's way more likely to ask a smart clarifying question instead of just guessing wrong. And the result of that, this is the crucial part, is that you spend way less time on frustrating repair prompts, which lets you stay in that state of deep work for a lot longer. Then you've got the whole issue of trust. Anthropic has been super transparent with its responsible scaling policy. By publicly laying out their principles and, pushing back on certain applications, they've built this really strong narrative around safety. And this stood in stark contrast to all the controversy swirling around OpenAI's defense contracts. It created a really clear choice for big companies that are focused on managing risk. And finally, let's talk about the big structural change that makes all of this possible. The industry is quickly settling on a standard called the Model Context Protocol, or MCP. It's for tool connectivity. And here's the kicker. OpenAI now documents MCP connectors too. So when both of the big rivals adopt the exact same open standard, switching models stops being a huge rewrite project and just becomes a simple change in a config file. Of course, none of this is happening in a vacuum.
OpenAI just shipped GPT 5.4, which is a seriously powerful model. So why are people looking to leave now, right at the peak of its power? Well, it turns out a lot of the reasons are basically self-inflicted wounds.
Two major trust shocks really hit OpenAI's user base hard in early 2026. First, as this timeline shows, they started testing ads inside ChatGPT, which, to put it mildly, did not go over well with the community. Then, right after that, their shifting stance on defense contracts blew up into a major public issue, leading to some very high-profile people resigning and just generally eroding developer confidence.
The other huge factor is what people are calling platform churn. OpenAI moves incredibly fast, but they also break things fast. Their popular Assistance API, for example, has a published sunset date of August 2026. And every single time developers are forced to do expensive, time-consuming engineering work just to stay compatible, it creates this natural pause where they look around and seriously consider a more stable competitor.
Okay, so you've got these pull factors from Claude and these push factors from OpenAI. So how do the two flagship models actually stack up right now on the metrics that really matter? Let's get into it.
All right, let's break it down. As you can see here on pricing, they're basically neck and neck. GPT 5.4 is about $250 per million input tokens, while Claude Sona 4.6 is around $3. When it comes to latency, or speed, OpenAI has a clear lead for things like real-time voice, while Claude really shines in tasks like coding and document analysis, where getting it right is more important than getting it fast. And for fine-tuning and privacy, they just take different approaches, so you really have to read the fine print.
But here is the most crucial point, and if you take one thing away, it should be this. We are past the point of just comparing the cost per token. The real metric, the one that actually impacts your budget and your time, is the cost per successfully completed task. Think about it. A slightly more expensive model that gets the job done right on the first try is way more efficient than a cheaper one that makes you try 3 times. So where does all this lead? With the rise of this multimodal approach, what can we actually expect from the future of the AI stack? Here's the core prediction. The ultimate winner in this whole race isn't going to be the lab with the highest score on some academic benchmark test. Nope. It's going to be the ecosystem that delivers predictable costs, stable APIs, and seamless connectivity. Reliability is officially the new frontier. So in the short term, you can pretty much bet on 3 things happening. 1, these rapid-fire model release cycles, they're going to continue. 2, we're going to see more of these abstraction and routing layers pop up to make swapping models even easier. And 3, standards like MCP are going to mature, basically turning tool connectivity into a solved problem. The lesson from this whole great rotation is pretty clear. Don't build your house on a single model. Build it on solid evaluations, smart abstractions, and a flexible workflow. Because switching is only going to get easier from here. And that really just leaves us with one final question to think about. Is your AI stack built for today's best model, or is it ready for tomorrow's best ecosystem?